The Plein Air Easton Podcast is brought to you by the Avalon Foundation, enriching the lives of those on the Eastern Shore of Maryland through the arts. Visit avalonfoundation.org for details on events, performances, and educational programming offered throughout the year. Today's episode is sponsored by JFM Enterprises, providing distinctive ready-made and custom frames and moldings to the trade since 1974. Visit jfm.net to view their catalog of designs.
Can you paint something in 15 minutes? How loose would it be in 15 minutes? And would it, is that possible, Laurie? I mean, do you do that? Do you ever try that?
Yeah, I've actually never tried a 15-minute painting, but maybe that's a good idea for a new competition thing for Easton, right? A really, really quick.
Talk about somebody chasing you like a pack of rhinos or something.
We could do one like every 2 hours.
You have 2 hours, but you have to do 8 paintings. Right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
This is the Plein Air Easton Podcast with Tim Wigan, that's me, and we're bringing back somebody out from the bullpen this week. Marie Nuttall, welcome back, Marie.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here. It's, after the event happens, there's just, the vacations have to happen.
Right, yeah.
And the packing up and all those things. So I've been away for a little while, but I'm back.
Did you have a good vacation?
Yes, I have had a couple. I've packed a couple in there.
What did you like most? So we talked with artist Laurie Maher today. What did you like most about Laurie, that conversation, Marie?
Just the full gamut. It's so nice to have an opportunity to talk to an artist in depth because, as well as I do, that during the event there just is not time.
It doesn't
to
happen
do
a
that.
whole lot at all.
And I really feel like I miss out on meeting a lot of really fascinating people.
Well, everyone, welcome back. Marie Nuttall, please. This is Laurie Metcalf. My favorite part was Laurie Maher, I'm sorry. Laurie Metcalf was the sister on Roseanne. This is not Laurie Metcalf. This is Laurie Maher, and I loved when she talked about a little bit of a Pixie Dust later on in the interview. Let's go. It is the week after Labor Day. Laurie, where are you vacationing?
Oh, it's a staycation, actually.
Oh, nice. How do you do that?
Well, I'm not really going anyplace. I'm just kind of taking some, day trips, doing some painting. And actually, I'm going to go to Connecticut to see my mom. She doesn't know yet, so don't tell her. I'm glad this isn't live because I'm going to be surprising her tomorrow. She doesn't know I'm coming home to see her for a couple of days. She's in Connecticut.
Very good, very good.
Since this was your first year and you...
It was my first year participating, but my third time trying to get in. So it took 3 tries before I actually got accepted.
So tell me a little bit about that. I see that you were a participant in our quick draw competition. How many years did you do that?
I did that, this is 2021, 2018. I came down for the quick draw.
And you won second place, is that correct?
Among the non-competition artists, obviously, yes. That was the year it poured rain. It was...
That was the monsoon biblical rainstorm of 2018 with the likes of which I've never seen before.
Well, what I did was I kind of scoped out the day before, and I found, you probably even know, on a street in Easton, I wish I could remember the name of the street, but there's basically a tunnel walkway that leads from the street to a back parking lot. Mm-hmm. And it's like an archway, and my easel fit perfectly in that spot, and it gave me a view looking down a street. And I basically said, I think I'll just paint that. It was basically, my subject matter was picked entirely because of location. I knew that I'd be out of the rain.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So you have been traveling down here and trying to get in. Tell me about, we know that you have a full-time career in the health industry. And
I do.
Tell us about your art experience. Did you take classes? Did you go to college for that? How did art permeate your life?
Well, I mean, I did go to school. I did an undergraduate degree in a combination of psychology and studio art. At one time I had considered possibly like an art therapy sort of degree. But then basically I wanted to try to sort of go strictly with art, and I did go and get a master's degree. So I did a master's degree at Marywood University in Pennsylvania back in, we're talking late 80s now, that I did that. And, but, by making a career out of painting, as I'm sure everyone listening knows, is not the easiest task. And healthcare has been, the steady income of my life.
And we talked about that a little bit when we bumped into each other during the Nocturne. You had talked about that a little bit. Can you say a little bit more about that teetering between the art world and the practical career world?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's challenging for anybody who does that. And, I don't know how many artists, can actually do their art full time and make a living off of that. I think even if they can do it, they would say it's really challenging. And I think most artists are trying to juggle, a job and their art. So I think a lot of it is just trying to have enough energy, outside of your full-time job, especially, a job in healthcare, especially with the pandemic over the past couple of years. It can be both physically and sort of emotionally draining job to do. And, everybody wakes up in the morning, you have a certain amount of energy. And I always tell myself, like, okay, I'm going to pace myself today. I'm going to do my job and come home and have this time and energy and mental capacity to work on my art. And it doesn't always happen. Right.
How many times, Laurie, do you say you're going to do that and then sit down at the painting and maybe not do anything, but just be in the space where does that happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, having the space to do it is a key, because I found that the more convenient you can make accessing art, the better. You know what I mean? So I don't have a dining room anymore. I basically turned it into a studio. I live in a condo. I don't have a separate studio space. And so the dining room table is gone. The chandelier came down. There's studio track lighting. And basically I just have my studio, quote, studio space is right here as part of my regular living space. So it's always there. I don't have to take things out, put them away, or go anywhere in order to do it. And so if it's right there, you're more likely to go over, and even if you just doodle on a sketch pad for 10 minutes, you're more likely to do it if it's right there in your face.
Right. I can see that. I can definitely see that. Laurie, I was taking a look at your body of work on your website, and you have quite a range from your sketches to still life and portraits and landscapes. Is there any of those that speak to you more than the others?
Oh, I mean, without a doubt, the landscapes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say that the still lives and the portraits, I do those mostly as another way to practice, so that I can be better at landscapes.
Ah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are those kind of practice sort of things?
I would say so. Yeah, just another way to try to get better at, looking at shapes, colors.
How does painting a still life help you with a landscape in outdoors in 90-degree heat?
That's a good question, and actually it helps a lot because. So actually, I'm going to answer your question slightly differently, and I'm going to answer. You're going to say, you asked, how does painting a still life help for landscapes? I'm going to take the portraits, because honestly, if you look at my portraits, I mean, it's obvious I'm no portrait painter. That is obviously not my primary skill. But in painting portraits, I really believe that my landscapes got better when I took these portrait painting classes. And I'll tell you why. Because if you're drawing a tree and you draw the branches and it's a little bit off, no one's going to look at that and say, oh man, that tree looks weird. That doesn't look right. But if you draw someone's nose or you put their eye in just a little bit, it can be off by a millimeter and it's like, what's wrong with that person?
Right.
I get that.
Just the slightest difference in the line of someone's mouth makes it look like either they're smiling or they're scowling. It's amazing how the most subtle difference can make a huge difference in a portrait. So I think that it forces you to be, spot on as far as your, shapes and lines in order to describe something. So then when you go out to do a tree, your eye is more trained to look for subtle differences because, it's easy to look at a tree and say, oh yeah, I know what a tree looks like. Or, I know how that branch grows. But it's another thing to actually stop and study it and go, wait a minute, it doesn't actually do that. It actually does this, or it doesn't actually bend in that direction. It bends in this other direction. So I think it just sharpens your eye and makes you more aware of subtle differences.
It makes total sense. And it's a specificity. It makes you more specific, I guess, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think it just gives you a better eye, and also for color as well, because flesh tones, another thing, you get flesh tones wrong and it doesn't look right. Right, and I learned a lot about, using, warm tones versus cool tones and shadow areas, and learning about, how shadow areas look in a landscape. I learned a lot about that in a portrait painting class. I had a really good portrait painting instructor. I take some classes here in New Jersey at a place called the Visual Arts Center. And the instructor's name is Stephanie Deshpande, and she's just a spectacular portrait painter. I've taken classes with her on and off over the past few years. And, if you look at her work, you can just see how well she uses, especially, color to create these beautiful portraits.
Right.
How, Laurie, how often do you actually take an extra class, and what types of classes do you take?
Again, it's let me see. I probably take a couple of classes a year. They run about 10 weeks at this art center where I go.
Oh wow!
And sometimes I've taken up to 3 a year. Obviously, with the pandemic, the classes were kind of shut down, but they started up again this year. I did a one-day portrait workshop just a couple of weeks ago. I'm doing an online portrait workshop starting next week. And I'm probably going to take figure drawing again, which I've taken on and off probably 5 or 6 times in the past few years, because that's always good practice.
Right. You can always get like another tidbit, another gem to add to your toolbox, so to speak, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And drawing is where it's at. If you can't draw well, you're not going to be able to paint well. So, and I could easily just draw for the rest of my life and be happy. I love to draw. So
how Laurie, when you take these classes, what's the difference? Because you're working on the maintenance of your craft, I guess, when you're taking the classes. How do you, when you come out, you say, okay, I'm not taking a class anymore. I'm in a competition, or I'm wherever, or I'm inspired by this. What do you do different in a class that you do, or do in the field that you don't do in a class?
Well, the classes that I take, I specifically take them because they're things that I really can't do on my own. I like figure drawing, because there's live models, and the portraits as well. It's live models. You can do online figure drawing, but it's just different. Your eye sees things when you're actually there in person that you really just don't see on a computer's monitor.
Right. I guess I'm kind of asking, it's like you practice, and then what's the difference between practice and playing? for lack of a better metaphor?
That's another really good question.
I'm 3 for 3 today.
I know. I'm just totally like bombing here. Tim's on fire.
No, it's not a competition.
You're just saving up in your mind. You're thinking you're going to come out with the greatest question, right?
I'm trying to connect.
No, but
yeah.
You know what? I'm going to compare that to because I actually just got back into painting. I took a really, really long break, which I kicked myself every day for a really long time. I stopped painting and drawing for about 15 years, and I just went back to it about 8 years ago. But in that time, I was doing a lot of more athletic things, a lot of running and triathlons. So to answer your question, I'm going to use sort of a sports metaphor. Uh-huh. So say I was going to train for a marathon. I wanted to try to do my absolute best time. That would be the competition. Right? That would be like Easton. It's like the New York City Marathon. You train for months and months and months, and you might use a coach and follow a certain program. That would be the practice. And then on the day of the marathon, you hope that all that training and practice that you did all comes together and you run the best marathon of your life.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, I guess every artist practices. I mean, we haven't talked to anybody who's we've really sounds like you practice a lot. I mean, 3 classes a year is not. That's a lot of time.
It's like 30 weeks.
Yeah, 30 weeks.
Yeah, because.
Is it a bad question?
What's going through my head is I almost see it all as practice in a way. Like I don't really feel like there's much difference between okay, I'm just practicing drawing and when I go out and do a painting, I never feel like, wow, this is going to be the best painting ever, or this is going to be put in a frame and this is going to be the thing that's going to get me into a gallery. Like I always feel like when I'm painting, it all feels like practice in a way. I guess, because I haven't done a lot of competitions, so obviously I felt a difference when I went to Easton. But actually, I tried when I was in Easton to continue the same mindset of I'm just practicing. This is just a continuation of what I try to do every day. I'm not trying to make something great. I'm going to put out of my head the fact that the president of the Metropolitan might be looking at this. I think if you think those things while you're painting, I mean, that's a surefire way to just bomb, probably, because then you just feel like the second you start to think that your painting must be good or must be frameable, I think that's probably the kiss of death.
Right. And there's a nuanced difference in the word practice also, if we're really to break it down. There's practicing for a play, we're just going to run through this scene real quick and we're not in costume and all those things. And then there's practicing, practicing medicine or,
right.
Where it's not I'm just faking it until the real patients get in here. You're
that's true.
That's your career, that's your calling, and you're on point. So
right.
It's just a little bit of a nuanced difference in the word itself, but
no, it's
right.
true. The reason I'm asking is I've been reading this book about practicing. So it's just kind of interesting that you it's all about practice. The book I'm reading is all about practicing and before you go to do something, and the fact that you brought up practice is kind of the clue. Again, I've just enjoyed getting to know the plein air movement, what painters do. So some of my questions will be pretty primitive in this.
Or is it more skill building, Laurie?
Yeah, I would say that's probably a good way to look at it.
So I want to talk about putting the rubber to the road, basically, and so how does an artist or an artist that has spent so much time practicing and honing their craft take the leap into a competition? Can you tell me about your experience?
Why would you
with
do
that?
Why would I do the competition?
Not why. Well,
Yeah,
why would you do that?
Taking a leap is a totally different thing, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's totally different.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's there's a lot of draw to participating in a competition, such as just being around other people who do the same thing and love the same thing that you do, because, I feel like a lot of other painters do a little bit isolated sometimes. I don't have a lot of contact with people who understand the same jokes that I have about, dropping your fresh painting face down in the dirt, or, being outside and, having all kinds of these crazy things happen to you when you're outside plein air painting. There's certain jokes that, that you can tell other plein air painters and they'll get them. Whereas if I tell my friends who work in healthcare, they just think like, what are you talking about?
Wrong audience.
Wrong audience. Like, being around other people. And there's also, you get better when you surround yourself with people who are better than you too. So
collective energy.
You sort of, I think there's some theory that you tend to become more like the people that the 20 people that you most surround yourself with. Anyway, the bottom line is that, like, I think that when you surround yourself with people who are better than you at anything, you rise to their level, or at least increase your own skill level. And that's one of the other reasons I wanted to be in a competition, was to try to get better.
So that is something I do want to circle back on, but I'm not sure that I heard what your motivation was to jump into a competition for the first time.
Well, let me see. I've only done a couple of other events before Easton. I did the Finger Lakes competition up in upstate New York back in 2000. I think that was 18. They don't actually have that event anymore, sadly. It was really nice. Yeah, it was a beautiful area to paint too. And
so again, was the Long Beach Island painting, was that your first competition?
That was the first one. That's in Long Beach Island holds a competition, which is a little bit different in structure. You don't go there for a solid week and paint. It's all summer, and you can show up anytime that you want in this couple of month time block and paint, and then at the end of the summer you hand in basically what you think is your best work.
Oh, so that's kind of like a nice way to ease into it.
Yeah,
it sounds like.
It doesn't feel like as much pressure, but you're losing that connection because you're just showing up and painting on any given day, and the chances that you're going to bump into somebody else is pretty slim.
So, and you said that, you have told us that you won an honorable mention at the Long Beach Island competition. So, and that you have a funny story to tell us.
I do. Actually, I did win an honorable mention for the quick draw, and the funny story is this. It was a really hot day, and they do their quick draw like starting at noon, so it was right at the heat of the day.
Nice.
You're by the beach, no place to find shade, and I, walked around looking for something with some sort of interesting light hitting it. Again, it's midday light, so it wasn't that great. And by the time I got set up to paint, I was sweating. I wasn't happy with what I was working on. And I don't know about other painters, but when I'm in the process of working on a painting that's not going well, I get kind of grumpy. Right? So it's like, if you come up to me while I'm painting and you talk to me and I start talking back to you and I'm obviously in a good mood, that means the painting's going well. But if I just sort of growl at you a little bit and mumble something, it usually means like I'm not happy. So anyway, while I'm there painting during the quick draw competition, this woman walks up to me and is walking around and, like other people were doing, watching what the painters were painting. And she's looking over my shoulder, and I'm just, trying to just make something decent out of this mess on my panel. I was absolutely hating how it was going, and she says,
"You're ticked off. You're really ticked off.
I'm not happy with myself. I'm hot. Just basically, I'm painting in the middle of the day, a time of day when I would never choose to paint." And this woman says, "Oh, that's coming out really nice. I really like that." And I looked at her and I said, you like that? I said, this is like the worst thing I've painted in months. Right? Turns out she was the judge.
Yeah, that's a tough situation.
Right? And I had no idea, right? And I said, I think I managed to say something like, well, thank you, but this is like the worst thing. Is like, so she just smiled and walked away. So people gather in the room after to announce the awards, and now we're here to announce our judge. And in she walks, and I recognize her. I'm like, oh my God, like that is the judge. So yeah, that was.
I mean, I forgot. She gave you what?
Honorable
She gave me
mention.
an honorable mention. I still have that painting. I can't bring myself to throw it out or paint over it, because every time I look at it, I remember that story and it makes me laugh.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. And she's probably doubting herself from here on out too as a judge, because she loved it and gave you an honorable mention, and you said it was terrible.
Well, and it's probably a good lesson in, what other people see and your own self critique of your work. It kind of speaks
that
to
happens all the time. I mean,
right.
I almost never like what I paint ever. Like, I almost always want to wipe it out. And I've learned to at least get a photo of it before I wipe it out, because often I've gone back and looked at it and said, oh, gee, that wasn't that bad. Or another person has looked at it and said, that's beautiful. Can I see it in person? I mean, like, it's gone.
Exactly. Like, to somebody else, it is the most beautiful thing, the most beautiful painting that they've seen. So, yeah, you kind of have to know when to, and that goes to the old question of when is it really done? For some artists, it's like.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't like it, how do you know when to quit?
I always know when to quit. That's never a problem for me. I'm done when I leave the scene, because I have never once ever improved a painting by making any changes on it when I'm not on location.
That's interesting.
I can't. Whatever is done when I'm there, it's done. I've only ruined perfectly good paintings by attempting to, quote, fix something indoors or in the studio once I've brought it inside.
Yeah.
Now, Laurie, we had a conversation during Plein Air Easton, and I can't, if I'm putting words in your mouth, just correct me. But we had talked about, being in the competition, and you put all this practice in gear, and you get all your materials, and you show up, and you just, that's all you want in your universe, is just to paint the best you can possibly paint during that week. Mm-hmm. And you had told me that you felt like you had not only hit that mark, that personal milestone for yourself, but you had kind of excelled past that a little bit, like almost like out of body. Like, I don't even know who this person is that is that is painting this.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a week like that. I still say that someone sprinkled magic fairy dust over me for that week. It could not have gone better. I mean, it's not like I thought everything I painted should be hanging in the Louvre, but for me, they were what I would say was almost above my skill level. I mean, the running joke that I had was that my hope for Easton, the only hope that I, really wanted and had before I went, was that at the end of the week, when I looked at what I painted, I hoped that I wouldn't look at it and go, oh man, I didn't paint as well as I can. I know that I'm better than this, right? I hope that wouldn't happen.
Right.
And instead, at the end of the week, when I looked at what I painted, I looked at everything and I thought to myself, I'm actually not that good. People are going to think I cheated. Like, I had help or something. Like, it was like they were actually better than anything that I had painted, possibly ever.
Were you going to scratch any of those out? Were you unsatisfied with any of those when you finished them at Plein Air Easton?
I was not.
There you go. See?
There you go. There you go.
I mean,
We pay extra for that Pixie Dust. It's in our taxes.
Is that how it works?
Yes.
The Pixie Dust. Plein Air Pixie Dust.
It's spread all over the place.
And Laurie sent me an image, a text after it was over. Was that it was I guess in the days afterwards, and it was like Cinderella spinning around, and there's like sparkles and glitter all over the place. She's like, "This is how I felt since I left." So I hope that carried some of that carried with you for a little while longer.
Well, it didn't last too long because I stayed Sunday night because I wanted to stay. I didn't want to, rush back. Got up at 4:00 in the morning on Monday, drove back, and I was at my first patient by 9:30 that morning.
Oh,
that's brutal.
Monday. And I remember, I seriously was like at my first patient's house, back with the mask on, with my, visiting nurse shirt on, thinking like, what just happened? So this is like what Cinderella felt like when she woke up and there was mice around her and the coach had turned back into a pumpkin. Oh yeah, it's sort of like this other life I got to live there for a week where it's like, wake up every day and all you think about is where am I going to paint today, and then it was great.
It's quite a story, actually, to go back into to have that sort of thrill and high and something that you truly love, and then to go back to the mask and the shirt. I totally get it.
The question becomes too, like, how do I tap back into that? Like, that feeling, you've experienced it. It came through in your canvases and through your brush. And how do you tap back into that when you're feeling less inspired, or don't even feel like picking up a pencil and doing a sketch?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I don't think there's for 2 or 3 weeks after that, when I'd go out painting and I kept looking at the paintings and I'm saying like, wow, like nothing I'm doing is coming anywhere near what I did in Easton. Like, maybe there was something magic there. Maybe I'm never going to paint that well again. Like, oh man, what's going to happen? But then I just kind of kept plugging away, and I finally, within the past couple of weeks, I've done some work that I think is on par with what I did there. But I think some of that good stuff happened in Easton because it was the only thing I had to think about and do all day. I think it was having that mental space to only think about the painting and be away from the normal stress of everyday life. And of course, like, it just couldn't have gone better, including where I was staying. My host family and where I was staying was the first thing I said when I drove up and I saw where I was, and I looked at the couple, the host family who was hosting me, and I said, I think I just won the grand prize, right? Because I can't believe I get to stay here for a week and a half. I was staying on a 1,000-acre farm in the middle of a sunflower field.
Oh,
yeah, that's good.
Yeah, like it was incredible.
Just meant for a plein air.
No, we have a lot of support that has been built over the 17 years of the festival, and there's a lot of people. The festival is run by the Avalon Foundation. We're inside the Avalon Theater that is run by the Avalon Foundation at MCTV. We have a TV station. We have a farmers market. We do the 4th of July Carnival. We do a ton of stuff, and none of it. I just came to the realization over the last week and a half, none of it would happen without the people who volunteer their time and give of their houses none of it would happen. I mean, we
absolutely.
It's incredible. So we and Plein Air Easton is no stranger to that. They have hundreds of great people involved in that event. I want to change the subject here real quick, if I can, Laurie. You said something before about midday light, and you were like, "It was crappy midday light." And I've heard artists talk about this before. It's like Is it just that midday light looks so bad, or is it just really hard to paint?
No, I mean
Can
it's
midday light ever look good?
Absolutely, yes. I think there's a lot of artists who can make it look really good. I think it's harder to do. It just doesn't create a lot of interesting shadow shapes, and a lot of artists are looking for.
Is it too shiny?
No, like if you imagine, say you have, just put an object on your countertop and shine a light on it directly from the side, and it creates this beautiful long shadow that goes over the surface. As that light moves up, the shadow gets to the point that pretty soon there'll be little or no shadow. So shadows help to define the surfaces and the roundness of something or the shape that something is. So as the light moves up, it just doesn't hit the object in a way that makes it as defined or as interesting.
Gotcha. Is that why you squint your eyes and paint the dark stuff first?
Oh, squinting is to help sort of help you not see too much detail in shadow areas, and to help you see the to help you see the general shapes of things. If artists, painters, and one of the problems that we have is you look too hard into shadow areas, and because it's interesting in there, you see all kinds of beautiful colors that happen in deep shadows. But if you paint too much and put too much contrast into a shadow area, it tends to sort of jump out at you and not look or read the way it should spatially. So you squint to try to sort of tone that down so you see the shadow as an area and not as a bunch of individual broken up things.
That's fascinating.
Well, I mean, it's just again, it's part of my learning process in it. I'm not familiar with your style of painting, Laurie. To be very honest, are you a loose painter or not?
No, I mean I can be. One of the things I'm working on is trying to be a little bit looser with my brushwork. I think it tends to those paintings where I do loosen up tend to be more interesting and tend to be overall more successful. Some of the paintings I did at Easton, a couple of them I would consider tight, including the piece that the judge picked as the one for the award. That was what I was unhappy with about that piece. Actually, I thought it looked pretty tight. I actually was trying to create I said before, like, you should never try to paint and make it and be thinking, oh, I want this piece to be great, or I want this to be my competition piece. I said before, you should never do that. Well, I actually did do that, right? I did set out to create a competition piece because it was larger than I usually paint. It was 18 by 24, which certainly isn't that big compared to some other pieces. But for me, normally I paint smaller 8 by 10s, 9 by 12s. Going to 18 by 24, I felt like I was painting a mural. Like, it felt like it's that big of a leap for me. But, I figured, I'm here in Easton. If I'm not going to challenge myself, when am I going to do that? So I actually did that painting, the same scene I did on the Meet the Artist night. I did a smaller version, a 9 by 12. And in some ways I was happier with the smaller version, and I almost entered the smaller version as my competition piece, because if you compare the two, the smaller version that I did has the looser brushwork, and actually in some ways is more successful than the larger version of it, which in some ways I like it better. But again, I was torn between which two to enter. But I picked the bigger one because I said, hey, I know the space it's going to hang in, that small 9x12 is going to get lost on the wall, and I do want to try to bring a little attention to it. So
that's all part of this. That's all part of the strategy as well.
Exactly. So
getting all the way back to the very first question I think Marie asked of the podcast. It brings it all the way back. It's like, so, Marie, I mean, you want to follow that up?
I was, because you were hinting at strategy, I was just wondering if, will you go into future competitions with, have you tweaked your strategy? Have you given any thought to that? Where your comfort zones are and where you're not comfortable, and whether or not it's valuable to be in that kind of uncomfortable zone, because I guess what I'm hinting at is that's kind of where the growth is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think for future competitions, I learned a lot from Easton. One of the things was actually about finding the right locations to paint, because I'm not a very fast painter. So wherever I set up to paint, I have to know that I'm going to be comfortable there, or fairly comfortable there for a while. Because again, even the 18x24 painting that I did in Easton that I put into the competition, believe it or not, that was 3 sessions. I'm sure most of the other painters in Easton probably could have done that in 1 session easily, but I'm just not really fast. And I had already painted it once in a smaller version, so that just shows you how long it takes me to complete a painting. But
it was a practice. It was a practice version, right?
But you entered the quick draw. I mean, so that's a 2-hour. So you.
Oh yeah, quick draw to me is like, I feel like I'm running, like I'm painting while someone's chasing me. It feels like, quick, paint. It's so much pressure. I'm literally like, it's like the days that I used to run races. I feel like I'm actually like running. Like it's like I'm running a 5K as fast as I can. And even then I barely feel like I can complete anything.
That's pretty hilarious analogy, by the way. I might keep that.
Should put a heart rate monitor on me during a quick draw. My heart rate's probably like 120. It's like I feel like I'm painting as fast. You should see the mess that there is after I finish a quick draw, because I don't have any time to try to be even remotely neat. Like I'm covered in paint. There's stuff all over. It looks like a truck ran into my painting area. Like it's just, like, what happened here?
Well, I'm probably that way for other people as well, Laurie. But you've certainly proven that whether it's painting fast or in the quick draw or in 3 sessions, that you are impressing the judges who are judging these things. So congratulations on all of that. And
thank you.
It's been great to be able to meet you through the podcast today. What are your plans for what do you have upcoming on your vacation this week? Are you doing any painting on your vacation?
I have, yeah. Staycation. I've been painting. I went out yesterday and I actually got myself up before sunrise in the dark. I've been trying to paint sunrises, which is a very obviously quick and fleeting effect. It's one of my things I'm trying to do to get myself to paint faster, because you don't have 2 hours or 3 hours to paint sunrise.
Not even. That's right. Not even.
Well, that's. I would love to talk about how they do that, how fast that is.
I know.
I mean, that's just like when you start to think about the plein air painting, as historically, like, these great painters are what have been recognized as great painters, Monet and Michelangelo and some of the Renoir, I think, or whatever. Going out and really trying to capture a sunset, because they didn't have a camera, and so how quick did they really have to do it, and then and how loose was that painting? Just kind of like really. So again, we've got to wrap this up, but when you're trying to paint, like, can you paint something in 15 minutes? How loose would it be in 15 minutes? And would it, is that possible, Laurie? I mean, do you do that? Do you ever try that?
Yeah, I've actually never tried a 15-minute painting, but maybe that's a good idea for a new competition thing for Easton, right? A really, really quick.
Talk about somebody chasing you like a pack of rhinos or something.
We could do one like every 2 hours.
You have 2 hours, but you have to do 8 paintings. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
We will let you paint one, then take an hour and 45-minute break, then do another one. Then that'd be a workout. Great. Well, Laurie, this has been a lot of fun, and again, great to know you. I hope you enjoy your vacation, your staycation. Marie, any last words?
It was a pleasure having you in Easton this year, and you were one of the few artists that I actually was able to have, some great little snippets of conversation with, because I don't really get a lot of chance to do that. So
yeah, because you're busy.
I'm busy managing all you cats.
And hopefully I'll meet you next year.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Fingers crossed that I get in again. Now, I used to be disappointed when I didn't get in. Now I'll really be disappointed because now I know how fantastic it is. So
you're on a great track, Laurie, and I know we'll see you again.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes.
It was great. I really appreciate you inviting me to do this.
And hopefully there'll be more Pixie Dust next time you come down.
Yes.
You gotta save it.
We're gonna try and figure out how to market that Pixie Dust.
Perfect.
Thanks, Laurie.
All right, thank you so much.
The Plein Air Easton Podcast is brought to you by the Avalon Foundation, enriching the lives of those on the Eastern Shore of Maryland through the arts. Visit avalonfoundation.org for details on events, performances, and educational programming offered throughout the year. The Plein Air Easton Podcast is produced by Nick Richards. Our theme music was generously provided by Blue Dot Sessions, and additional episode music by Blanket Music. Remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. You can learn more about Plein Air Easton at pleinaireaston.com.